Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson. A big welcome from Dimitri, who's very tired after spending all day playing on his new climbing frame, so hopefully he'll hang around a little bit longer than sometimes. It's fantastic to have you here for this lesson on fractions, decimals and percentages. Why, you may ask, am I covering this topic yet again when I've covered it a number of times before? Well, the reason is that it's so important, it's so fundamental to the maths that you do, and every time you go over this and understand it better and get faster at it, it will help you with a whole host of question types that might turn up in your exams. Even Dimitri is an expert on converting between fractions and decimals, although he hasn't quite mastered percentages yet. If you want to talk in the live chat comments and you're wondering why you can't, it's because the chat is for subscribers. Subscribing is free, just click the subscribe button underneath this video on YouTube and you can join in the live chat. If you want to become a channel member, you get access to loads of other resources and you get options including me sending me work for personal feedback. There are loads of videos just for members. I'm just busy completing a set of maths answers for Latimer Upper, which will go up in the members only section of the channel. If you want to find out about all the other members only videos, I'll post a link to my complete video list of all my videos in the comments under this video when I'm done with this lesson. Okay, I think that's enough waffle for me. Do you think so, Dimitri? Dimitri says, yeah, enough waffle. So let's get started with the lesson. So as you'll have seen, if you looked at the worksheet, off he goes. There are quite a lot of questions in this worksheet today. That's because we'll be able to move through quite a lot of them quite quickly. I want to give you lots of practice so that you really understand how to make these conversions. So let's get cracking. Write down 45% as a decimal. Well, what does 45% mean? Of course it means 45. It doesn't mean to exit full screen. Go away, notification, go away. Something that does as I ask. It means 45 out of 100. And what does a decimal tell us? Well, it tells us how many we are out of 10. So for example, 0.1 is 1 out of 10. Or if we go to 2 decimal places, it tells us how many out of 100. So in this case, it will be 0.45. Now the question says write down, so we have to be clear which of these things I've written is actually the answer. And so an easy way to do that is to double underline it. And when there isn't an answer space, that's a really good way to indicate where your answer is amongst all the working. As a fraction in its lowest terms, well, we've already written it as a fraction, 45 out of 100. But in its lowest terms, of course, means that we need to cancel. Okay? And by the way, it's always a really good starting point with percentages to think that a percent sign means out of 100. And so to write it out in this way at the start of whatever working you need to do with percentages until you're really comfortable with what they mean. So 45 out of 100, how do we find its lowest terms? We have to cancel it down. We have to reduce it. And we do that by finding a number that goes into the top and the bottom, okay? The numerator and the denominator. What goes into 45 and 100? Well, one ends in 5 and one ends in 0, so it's no surprise that both of these numbers divide by 5. How many 5s are there in 45? You know your times table, you know that it's 9. How many 5s in 100? There are 20. Now, do we stop here? Not necessarily. We have to look at these numbers and see whether we can cancel further. Is there anything that goes into both 9 and 20? No. Things that go into 9, 1, well, that won't cancel. That doesn't reduce the amount. If we divide by 1, they stay the same. We can ignore that. 9 doesn't go into 20. It isn't a factor of 20. And 3 isn't a factor of 20 either. It isn't in the 3 times table. So this is already in its lowest terms, and so that is our answer. Moving on, write the following numbers in ascending order. A classic 11 plus exam question. Right, now I'm going to lean into the microphone to say something very, very important. Okay, this is what somebody once called one of my ASMR moments, because I can't shout too loudly when I'm close into the microphone or it will do this and your ears will get blown off. So talking very quietly into the microphone. Read the question very carefully and pay particular attention to this word. This means going from smallest to largest. Ascending, like ascending a mountain. It does not say descending. Okay, so if you write from largest to smallest, you will straight away lose a mark, at least. Just occasionally an examiner might ask you to write them in descending order. So please take time to read the question. Yes, you'll normally rank them from smallest to largest, but don't get tricked if it asks you to do something else. Okay, now the thing about this question, and the reason why I've put it in this worksheet, is that it's mixing up fractions, decimals, and, drumroll, percentages, okay? So we could convert them all to be the same thing, although that might take time. But we'll certainly need to think about how we might compare some of these by making them into the same thing, okay? Now, rather than writing my working in the answer space, I'm going to work it out down below, and then when I've got a finished answer, I'm going to put it there. So what can I say about these numbers? I'm going to plunk 0.5 in the middle. It doesn't mean it's going to be the middle result, doesn't mean there's going to be the same number below and above, but it's a good one to work round, okay? So I've dealt with that, cross it out. And I can see quickly 75% is going to be bigger than that, so I'm going to put that above it up here, but I'm going to leave spaces to the left and to the right because I don't know where the other results are going to be. I can see that a third is going to be away down here, so I'm going to put that down here. So I'm just lining up some obvious ones that don't require too much thought. And I've left the two ones that are a little bit tricky, okay? 5/6 and 5/12. Now, which one should we start with? Let's look at 5/12 because I can see that that is less than a half, okay? I can see by inspection that that is less than half. That's a posh way of saying just by looking at the number, okay? Because 6/12 are, of course, as you know, a half. So it's going to be somewhere down here. The question is, does it belong here or does it belong here? And we have to do some working out to know. Specifically, we have to decide whether it is smaller or larger than a third. Well, a third would be how many twelfths? It would be 4/12, okay? So 5/12 is larger. So that goes in this gap here. It's smaller than a half, but it's larger than the third. Now we've seen that 5/6 is more than a half because 3/6 would be a half, okay? But is it smaller or larger than 75%? That's what we need to work out. So what can we do with this? Well, 75% is 3/4, okay? 5/6, that isn't over quarters, so it's hard to compare. How can we compare these? Well, 3/4 is 9 out of 12, okay? Times the top and the bottom by 3, or just say, well, 9 is clearly 3/4 of 12, depending how you think about these things. We think about things in different ways. 5/6 equals how many twelfths? Well, I've times 6 by 2, so I need to times 5 by 2. So I get 10 twelfths. So 5/6 is actually a little larger than 75%. So that's going to go over here. Be very careful, another ASMR moment, not really, be very careful that you write the original numbers, such as 5/6, and not what you've changed them to when you're working out, such as 10/12, okay? And now we've got our answer here, so we just need to write it in the answer box. So we've got a third, 5/12, 0.5, 75%, and 5/6. And these are, I check the question again, the following numbers. So have I written the numbers as given here? Yes, I have. Are they in ascending order, so going up from smallest to largest? Yes, they are. So I'm happy with my answer and I can move on. Am I really happy? I'm just going to check the answers I did earlier to make sure it agrees. Yes, it does. That's a relief. So at least if I'm wrong, I have to be doubly wrong. That wouldn't be impossible, but I'm fairly confident. And I move on. Notice how much checking I do after writing my answer. Now for me, as someone who's live streaming this lesson, that's important so I don't put out complete rubbish in the video, as I have done occasionally in the past. But it's equally important for you in an exam, okay? You have to do that checking of the question, making sure that you have indeed done exactly what it asks fully. And onwards. Right, and we've got a box of lovelies here. What is 0.4 written as a fraction? Now, where there's space to do the working out in the gap they've given me, I'll use that. Where there isn't, I will use the rest of the page to do my working out. This looks like the kind of question where they're only going to mark the answer because they've only really given an answer space rather than working out space. So make sure that you get it right. Someone in the comments, David, saying Kent exam is on Saturday. Good luck to everybody for that. I do have a video on the Kent test in the channel, so you might want to take a look. By the way, a special shout out, just in case he's watching, to my #1 fan, Samuel Koch. Hello, Samuel. Right, what is 0.4 written as a fraction? Well, anything is a fraction out of 1. Any number is a fraction out of 1 if it isn't a fraction out of something else. So 0.4 is 0.4 over 1, just like 11 is 11 over 1, and so on. You get the idea. So 0.4 over 1 and we've got a decimal here, so to get rid of it we have to times by 10 because there's one number after the decimal point, so we times by 10, which gives us 0.4, otherwise known as 4, and 1 times 10 is 10. Is that our answer? Well, it is 0.4 written as a fraction, but here's an important hint for maths exams, a very important hint, which is that you should always, when your answer is a fraction, simplify it unless there is a clear instruction not to. If you write 4/10, you are at risk of losing a mark, because we can see that this can be simplified because the top and the bottom are even numbers. Why does that mean that we can always simplify? Well, even numbers can always be divided by 2. So if the top and the bottom are both even numbers, we know that they can both be divided by 2. Let's do it. 2/5. Okay, 5 is a prime number, 2 is a prime number, so this can't go any further. I'm not going to double underline because it's obvious that that's our answer. What is 0.04 written as a fraction? So let's try the same approach. 0.04 out of 1. Okay, now because there are 2 numbers after the decimal point, we have to times by 100 to get rid of the decimal. So we're going to get we're going to get 0.04, otherwise known as 4, out of times 1 by 100 out of 100. Okay, can we simplify it? Yes, we can. 2 out of 50. Okay, can we do any more with this? Well, these numbers both divide by 2. So we're going to get 1 out of 25. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Right, what is 0.404 written as a fraction? Okay, this might take a tiny bit more working, so I'm just going to scroll down and use the space down here. So 0.404 out of 1 equals, now we have to times by 1,000 because there are 3 places to move the decimal place, so 404 out of 1,000. Okay, can we simplify that? They're both even numbers. 404 divided by 2, this is easy, it's 202. Divided by 500, both even numbers again. 101 divided by 250. Okay, is there anything that goes into both of these? Well, I'll simplify this for you. You obviously should try out the options if you're not sure, but 101 is a prime number, so this is our final answer. Okay? 101 out of 250. Make sure to write it in the answer space, or you are a silly bean, and make sure your 0 doesn't look like a 6. Well, now it looks like a horrible splodge, but never mind. I guess that counts as an improvement. What is an eighth written as a decimal? Well, there's more than one way to approach this. Okay, I think I'll show you the slightly longer way that you can always use as a start. Okay, and that is to do 1 divided by 8. Why is that something that you can do? Okay, I'll give you a moment to have a think. Because the bar in a fraction means divided by. So you can always, and I mean always, convert a fraction into a decimal if you divide the top by the bottom, because that means 1 divided by 8. That is what the fraction means. Okay, let's do that down here. So we've got an eighth. I'll just write it here as a reminder. So we can do 1 divided by 8. Hang on a sec, you say. How on earth do I do that? Aha! Because we can do this. 1.0 divided by 8. 8 doesn't go into 1. But it does go into 10 once. But there's a remainder, so we need another 0. Carry the 2. Because it's remainder 2, it goes in 1 time, remainder 2. How many times does 8 go into 20? It goes in 2 times, but there's a remainder. We need another 0. Okay, what's the remainder? It's 4. So 8 goes into 40 5 times. The doorbell just rang, so just excuse me for a millisecond. I've no idea who that is, and the automatic button to let them in doesn't work. So they're just going to have to be stuck there. Easy 11 plus triumphs over all. Okay, so we've seen that 8 goes into 40 exactly 5 times, and there is no remainder. So that's where we stop. Okay, so we got 0.125, and that is the answer. 0.125, and there we are. Now, of course, sometimes if you do this, you're going to get a number that goes on and on and on and on and on. And you might need to make a judgment about where to stop. So let's say you wanted to, oops, too far. Let's say you wanted to find, just for example, a third as a decimal, and you didn't know what that was. So you did 1 divided by 3. Okay, 3 doesn't go to 1, so 0 point goes into 10 3 times, remainder 1. Goes into 10 3 times, remainder 1. Goes into 10. Okay, we're going to be going on forever here. So that can happen. Sometimes it's just a very long decimal, but sometimes, as in this case, it's a recurring decimal. It will just go on and on and on. Occasionally, you'll get something that goes on and on without recurring. But that would be the case if you were trying to calculate pi, for example. But anyway, let's not get stuck on that. Right, how else might you do this? Well, you might know, for example, that a quarter is 0.25. So you'll know that an eighth is half of 0.25. What's half of 25? It's 12.5, so 0.125. So that would be a shortcut for you if you're familiar with that approach, if that comes to mind. But there's nothing wrong with doing what I did there and just working through it as a division. And I repeat, you can always turn a fraction into a decimal by dividing. So if you're going to learn one method for doing it, that is the method to learn. And you might want to spend a little bit of time looking at this until you fully understand what I've done, because it's a method that will stay with you for the rest of your life. Pity you. Right, what is 1/80th written as a decimal? What is this testing? We could just go back down and do the same technique, but notice 1/80th, 3/80ths. It's testing something a little bit more subtle here. What's the difference between an eighth and an 80th? Well, an 80th is 10 times as small, isn't it? Because 1/80th is 1 divided by 8 times 10. So it's an eighth and then divided by another 10. We know what an eighth is, it's 0.125. How do we divide 0.125 by 10? Well, we move the decimal place one place to the left. So it's going to be 0.0125. Stick a 0 on the beginning, 0 on the beginning, 0.0125. Hope that makes sense. We're just dividing by 10 again because we're dividing by 80 here rather than by 8. Cunning. Okay, what is 3/80ths? Aha, and I'm sure you can see where we're going with this. We've just found 1/80th, but we need 3 of them, okay? Now you could do 0.0125 times 3, but use your noodle. It might be simpler just to do 125 times 3, and then from that you should be able to see the answer. So what's 125 times 3? Well, we can do it as a column multiplication, but you can also quite easily do this mentally. 125 times 2, 250. Add another 125, 375. So it's going to be 0.0375. It's this here multiplied by 3. So that's a little shortcut. I think it's a completely legitimate shortcut. Once you have a good understanding of how numbers work, it's the kind of thing that can sensibly save you a little time in an exam. And that's something I'm always in favour of, as long as you're not taking crazy shortcuts that lead you to make mistakes. So one thing you have to judge through your learning is which shortcuts are going to help you out and which are going to cause mistakes. What can you trust yourself to do mentally without getting it wrong? Because once you're beyond that point, you should use paper methods and not rely on your brain. So you need to know your own strengths and weaknesses in maths. You need to know what mental arithmetic you can trust yourself with. Now, I should add to that as a follow-up, these are very clearly what you might call write down the answer questions. In other words, there's no space here for full working out, and therefore it's quite clear that they aren't expecting to mark that. If you've got a paper where they give you working out space and an answer space, there are several marks for each question. They want to see your working, particularly because if you make a mistake in your answer, they'll give you marks for the working. In that case, don't use too much mental arithmetic. Make sure to get some working down. Hope that makes sense. Onwards. I told you there are quite a lot of questions here, but we'd move through them at a fair rate, and that's what we're doing. It's only 20 past at the moment. We are flying. This might even be a short one, despite the number of questions. Right, calculate 0.4 plus a quarter plus 27 over 100. Right, I'm going to show you 2 ways of doing this, because you will note that it doesn't say give the answer as a decimal, or give the answer as a fraction, okay? I wouldn't recommend giving it as a percentage, but it would be marked correct. But stick to what we got, fractions or decimals. So let's do each of them. Let's start off by doing it as a fraction, okay? 0.4, what is that? Okay, now I could do it from first principles as before and write 0.4 over 1, then say we need times top and bottom by 10, but I'm now going to assume that you have a good basic understanding of what decimals mean, that 0.4 means 0 and 4/10. Okay, so 0.4 is 4/10. So we've got 4/10, is that fitting on the screen? Yep, 4/10 plus a quarter, oh yeah, plus 27 over 100. Now, what is the basic thing that we have to do to add fractions? And by the way, if you're weak on adding fractions, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, I have videos on that, folks. Go into the channel, go to the Easy 11 Plus homepage. You can get to it by clicking on the bright blue picture of my face underneath these videos on YouTube, and you will find videos on all these core topics. What do we need to do to add fractions together? They need to have a common denominator. What does that mean in English? It means they need to be over the same number. You need the same number under the fraction bar, okay? And what could be the same number here? Well, 4 goes into 100, 10 goes into 100, we can make them all be over 100. You could make them all be over 10,000 if you wanted, but then you'd have a hell of a lot of simplifying at the end. 100 makes sense here, I think. So, what's 4/10 as something over 100? Well, it's 40 out of 100. You know that? Surely. You can do it easily just by adding a 0 to the top and to the bottom, in other words, timesing both by 10, but you probably also know that 4/10 of 100 is 40. Plus a quarter, what's a quarter of 100? It's 25. And we've also got, looks like a down arrow there, doesn't it? Goodness me, what am I doing? Plus 27 over 100. And now we need to add these numbers together without making horrible mistakes. So you could do an addition. You could 40 plus 25 plus 27. But I'm going to skip on a bit because I want to show you doing decimals as well. So let's just do it by adding them up in our heads, which, is not always the best thing if you're not confident, but we're going to do it here because I'm slipshod. 25 plus 27 is 52. How do I know that? Because 25 plus 25 is 50. We've got 2 more, so 52. And 40, so 92. Is 92 over 100. Is that our answer? No, it is not. Why? Because, as I've explained to you earlier on, you should always simplify your answer when it's a fraction unless you are told not to. Okay? These both divide by 2. 46 over 50. I know I've gone to the answer box, sorry, equals 23 over 25. Do these simplify further? No, they don't. So the answer is 23 over 25. Do I need to underline this? No, it comes at the end of a line of equalses. It's clearly the answer I intend. So even though there's this stuff in the answer box, it doesn't matter. This is clearly my answer. However, try to avoid doing what I just did and letting your working splurge into the answer box. It's bad practice, and what happens if you run out of space and you're a bit stuffed? Okay, how else might you do this? You could also do this by adding decimals, which is perhaps in this case even quicker. So we could say 0.4 plus, remember your decimal points always line up when you're adding decimals together, a quarter. You should know that's 0.25. 27 out of 100 is 0.27. Okay, for reasons that I've explained in more detail earlier in the lesson, so I'm not going to repeat them. And then we just add them up. 0 plus 5 plus 7. 5 plus 7 is 12. We carry the 1. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Decimal point, all the zeros are 0, 0.92. So you can also give your answer as 0.92. You can see that's the answer, by the way, because that's 92 over 100 over there. So either 23 over 25 or 0.92. If you write something like one of these, I think you'll get 1 mark out of 2 because you've got the correct answer, but not fully simplified. Okay, onwards. I'm talking so fast I could be an auctioneer. My father-in-law always says, why do you talk so fast in these videos? It's really hard to follow. It's because you are so smart that you can follow it. I know it. It's also because I know that you really want to get to the end of everything and get to your dinner or whatever exciting things you have planned. Or you just want to get away from, your parent standing over you with a rolling pin saying, study, watch the video. And you want me to get to an end so that you can escape from the menace of the rolling pin. Who knows? Right, 51 over 60 as a decimal. Okay, how are we going to go about doing this? Well, first thing we should ask ourselves is, can we simplify it? Because yes, I could just do a division. I could do 51 divided by 60. Clearly it doesn't go, so I need 51.0. Then I say, how many times does 60 go into 510? I could do it that way. I could. It would get the right answer, but it's going to be a really fiddly long division. I prefer to avoid that. So always, when you've got a fraction like this, you need to convert it into a decimal. I strongly recommend that you start by looking at whether it can be simplified. And you might look at 51 over 60 and say, well, clearly these don't have a common factor. But think about it. Think about it. What times table are these both in? Well, these are both in the 3 times table. They must be. 60 is in the 3 times table, and 51 is 9 fewer than 60. So it must also be in the 3 times table. How many times does 3 go into 60? It goes in 20 times, of course. Into 51, 17 times. 17 out of 20. Can I simplify that further? No, 17 is a prime number. So this is the point where I think about turning it into a decimal. Now, you could, of course, do 17 divided by 20. You go to 17.0, how many times does 20 go into 170, and so on. You'll get the answer actually pretty quickly that way. It isn't a difficult division. But, what else can you do? Notice it's over 20. It's really easy to get from a fraction over 20 to a fraction over 10, because you just have to half it. What's half of 17? It's 8.5. What's 8.5 divided by 10? It's 0.85. I just moved the decimal point one place. So that's going to give me my answer. Nice and simple. I can actually do it just like this without actually doing any division. How would I do the division? Well, it doesn't go into 17. Goes into 170 8 times. Okay, there's a remainder of 10, because 8 times 20 is 160, and 20 goes into 100 5 times. So that isn't actually particularly difficult, but I think this little shortcut here is even more elegant, convenient. Onwards, we're absolutely romping through this. There are only 2 more questions. Brilliant, you're doing fantastically. Let's go on the comments, have a quick look. 11 plus master, Robert, you are so clever. 11 plus master, what are you after? Robert, please disable chat. If you don't like the chat, just minimize it. There's a little arrow by the chat box. You can click on it and the chat will go whoosh and you won't see it anymore. And that is the easiest way for you to disable chat. You don't need me to do it for you. Harley says, stop trying to be funny, Robert. It hurts. I feel so wounded. I'm just going to potter off and have a little cry. Sorry. Hang on. Right, crying over. Back to the maths. Add together the following, giving your answer as a decimal. Okay, so we should write them as decimals, right? A fifth is 0.2. Why is it 0.2? 1 over 5 is, times it by 10, 10 over 50, times it by 2, 20 out of 100. Okay, which is same as 2 out of 10, or 0.2. The fifth is 0.2, but I would say that by the time you come to do 11 plus, it's good if you know these common conversions. If you know that a fifth is 0.2 is 20%, and so on, it will save you a lot of hassle and probably a lot of mistakes. Right, so fifth is 0.2. 27% is 0. Who would have thought it? 27, and 0.708 is 0.708. I think we should add some zeros so that everything lines up. It's going to make our life easier. You can add as many zeros as you want after the end of a decimal. It doesn't change its value. You're just saying it's 0 and 2 tenths and no hundredths and no thousandths. Now we add them together. 008, ooh, it's 8. 0707, 7 and 2 and 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, we've got a 1 to carry. Don't forget the decimal point, and that goes there. 1.178, is that my answer? Yep, it's the same answer I got earlier, so we'd better hope it's correct. 1.178. We always check the question again, just to be certain. Add them together, yep. Giving our answer as a decimal, yup. Okay, so unless I have made a mess of it, that is my answer. Onwards. Last question. There are a few questions here, but it's the last question in a broad sense, which isn't entirely accurate. Time for some coffee after that, I think. Astroboost says, everyone listen to Robert. Yes, always. Even though I'm not funny, Harley. Even though I'm not funny. Add together 20% of 40 and 2/5 of 20 and 2/3 of 21. Okay, what's 20% of 40? So there's more than one way of doing this. It may be obvious to you. I'm just going to take this moment just to recap a few methods of doing this. So 20% of 40. So you could do it because it's a nice easy percentage. You could say 10% of 40 equals 4. Therefore, 20% of 40 equals 2 times 4, 8. Okay? Or you could do 40 times 0.2. Okay? Useful way to do it. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 4 is 8. And the next line is 0, 0, 0. So we can ignore that. There's one digit after a decimal point in the question. So we put the decimal point one place from the right, 8.0. So that's another way of finding the answer is 8. Look, it's 8 whichever way you do it. There are other ways of doing it, but let's not get carried away here. I'm sure you know what you're doing. 20% of 40 is 8. 2/5 of 20. Remember, of course, as anybody who's watched any of my maths videos knows, that of in maths means times. Yes, it does. So 2/5 of 20, let's do it here. 2/5 times 20 over 1, because any number is itself over 1. Can we cancel? 2 and 5 don't cancel, 21 don't cancel, but only when you are multiplying fractions, only when you're multiplying, not dividing, not adding, not subtracting, but when you've got a nice multiply sign in the middle, you can also cancel, magic trick, diagonally. 5 and 20 cancel. 5 goes into 20 4 times. 2 times 4 is 8 over 1, which is 8. Okay, so 2/5 of 20 are in fact also 8. 2/3 of 21. Sometimes the kind of common sense mental arithmetic method is just calling out to you. You know that 1/3 of 21 is 7, okay, because you know your times tables. So of course 2/3 are 14. Add them together, 8 and 8 are 16, add that to 14, and we get 30. Is it clear which number in that box is my answer? Yes, it is, so I don't think I need to double underline it or anything like that. Please don't spam the comments. Debbie, I see you. Debbie, do not spam the comments with emojis. Thank you. Well done to Semigloss. I did my 11 plus test yesterday. Time to revise for round 2. You did an exam yesterday and you're already here preparing for your next round, even before you got the results in the first round. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Well done on your dedication. That is the attitude that will make you a success in life. Sarah is 24 years old. Peter is half as old as Sarah. Mike is 2/3 of Peter's age. Okay, what is their total age? So we're not just going to see the answer leaping out here unless we are geniuses. Of course you all are, so you already see it, but I don't. I need to work it out. Sarah's 24. Okay, 24. Peter is half as old as Sarah. 12. That was straightforward. Mike is 2/3 of Peter's age. Okay, do we need to work this out? What's the third of 12? It's 4. 2/3? 8. Okay. What's their total age? Aha, easy peasy. 24 plus 12, 36, plus 8, 44. Checking I haven't made some stupid mistake. Well, if I did, I made it earlier as well. Okay, write down a decimal between 81% and 84%. Okay, let's think of these as decimals first. 0.81 and 0.84. Why am I using such little writing? I want it to be very clear which thing here is my answer so that these don't look like my answers. Okay, we've got 0.81 and 0.84. In other words, 81 out of 100 and 84 out of 100. So why not pick 82 out of 100, which would be 0.82? Nice and straightforward. 0.83 would be fine. 0.825186743598 would also be a correct answer, although I'm not entirely sure why you would go for that one. Write down a fraction between 70% and 80%. Maybe it's screaming at you, but let's just go through. So what's a percentage between them that'll be nice and easy to change into a fraction? I wonder, is it going to be, 71.38%? It could be, but I think I'm going to go for 75% because I have a vague degree of exam and common sense and don't want to waste time. 75% is what fraction? It is, of course, 3/4. That's such a straightforward percentage that you probably don't need to work it out. If you did need to work it out, you would write 75 over 100, and then you'd simplify. You'd say 25 goes into both of these, 25 goes into 75 3 times, it goes into 100 4 times. Oh, look, it's 3/4. What a surprise. And that's our answer. And that, folks, is the end of that. We covered all the questions in this lesson. You may have looked at the worksheet and gone, there are so many questions, but I told you we'd be moving through quite quickly. Robert, do you have any worksheets for fractions, percentages and decimals? Well, this one, for a start, there's a worksheet linked in the video description. That's what we've been working on. Where have you been? No, only joking. Maybe it's your first lesson and you don't know. But there's a link in the video description on YouTube and on Facebook. Click on it and this worksheet will pop up. Do I have other worksheets on fractions, decimals and percentages? You are in luck. Yes, I do. I've covered this topic before. Go to the channel, go to the Core Maths playlist and you'll find various videos there. Or go to my magic list of all Easy 11 Plus videos, which I'll put in a comment. I'll also add it to the video description where, to be honest, it should be anyway. And that will show you the topics of all my videos and you can just search through and find the ones on fractions, decimals and percentages. There are also some on fractions and some on percentages and some on decimals. But yes, there are also ones on this. Right, okay. I'm going to go to today's... Okay. Getting a little bit philosophical this week, but I think it's sometimes useful to bring a little bit of a reality check when it's time for exams and everyone's getting very stressed. I know a lot of people watching this video are doing exams at the moment or will have them soon. We get so worried about exams because we are obsessed with controlling our lives, and we think if we work hard enough and we do well in the exams, then we'll get into a great school, then our parents will be happy, and then we'll do well at that school, and then we'll get into Harvard, and then we'll become masters of the universe. But life isn't like that. We can't control our futures, people. It's a revelation that may be shocking to you, but is nonetheless true. You can do your best. You can do your best in the exam. Maybe you get into the school. Maybe you don't. Maybe you get into your dream school and then something happens and you don't do as well there as you wanted. Maybe you do brilliantly all the way through and things happen in your life and you're absolutely miserable and it was all worth nothing. At the end of the day, we cannot control what happens in our futures. We can just do our best. And the sooner you learn that lesson and the sooner you approach your exams recognizing it, the more likely you are to be able to accept what happens and to still be contented and to learn to be happy with whatever comes out of it. My life has been full of things that I have planned against, that I have not planned, that I didn't know would happen but actually were really good things, or that I didn't want to happen but still happened and they were absolutely awful, but I survived. And that's the way life goes. So don't stress about these exams too much. However well you do, however badly you do, you cannot control your future. Things will happen, and many wonderful things will happen in your life that you could never have predicted, and perhaps would only have happened if you'd gone and failed your 11 plus, or at least didn't get into your school of dreams. We don't talk about failing these days. It's very politically incorrect. So just bear that in mind. Do your best, but accept you can't control what happens in your life. You just have to do your best, and when possible, do it with a smile. And that's all you can possibly do. Okay, that's this week's Philosophy Corner at an end. Let's take some of your... Because, of course, I love your questions. Yes, people who are spamming the comments, Celia, you're writing a comment whenever the time limit possibly allows you to. Please don't do that. It just makes the comments useless for other people. I don't like blocking people from the channel, but I will do it if people just completely, make a mess of the comments and make them not useful for people. Project Josh, Robert, my exam is on Saturday. I hope it goes really well. And to everybody who has exams coming up, good luck. I won't keep giving good luck to everybody because that would be an awful lot of people, but I hope they go really well. What's the pass mark at a school? I mean, it depends on the school, but more than anything, it depends on who else is sitting in the exam. The school doesn't know the pass mark in advance. They might have 120 places. So if you're the best 120, or at least the top 120 when they've considered your exam performance, things like catchment area, siblings at the school, blah, 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 depending on what kind of school it is, then if you're in the top 120 people, then you get a place. So there isn't a pass mark. When schools say in advance there's a certain pass mark, that's because they standardise the marks afterwards so that only the top 120 get a certain mark. But it's a kind of mathematical sleight of hand. It doesn't mean that there's a set pass mark. Someone says, could I please post a video about SPAG? Well, I could do more of those, you're right, actually. It is something I didn't tend to cover, so fair comment. However, I think one of the very most useful videos on my channel is a live lesson that I did a few months ago on punctuation. Look that up, put Easy 11 Plus punctuation into your YouTube search bar when this lesson's over. And anyone who ever puts commas or full stops in the wrong places, please look at that video, go through it, go through the worksheet until you really understand it. It will make a huge difference for you. So that's probably my most useful video on SPAG. Oh, actually, other things. I've also got some videos on the GL style spelling and grammar sections of the exam. They will be useful to people who aren't doing the GL as well because they're good practice for spelling and grammar skills. Hannah Ross, how do you read quicker? Q-U-I-C-K-E-R. Okay. Sorry, I'm just being annoying and like an annoying teacher who's been in this live lesson for too long. How do you read more quickly? Thank you, adverb. Well, you can learn to read more quickly. There are certain techniques for fast reading. A lot of them involve missing a lot of stuff, so I don't really recommend it. To be honest, I don't think it's a particularly useful aspiration in its own right. As you improve your English skills, as you improve your word knowledge and your phonetic sense and your understanding of grammar, you will naturally reach your natural reading speed. And unless you have a special educational need, that natural reading speed is going to be sufficient for any normal use. And that will be the speed at which you can read while properly processing the words in front of you. And that will be a fast enough speed for exams, for any practical use, to be honest. Beyond that, there are techniques for speed reading, but they involve not fully understanding, they involve skipping stuff, they involve going through books at a speed faster than your brain can properly process the information, which is not really useful for very much in my opinion. There's only one thing that I think speed reading is really useful for, and that's when you don't actually want to learn all the information in a text, you're reading to find the relevant parts. So you might skim read a book because you're looking for a bit that deals with a certain topic, and then when you find that, you read it more slowly. So that's the one use of speed reading that's important. So for example, if you become a lawyer or something, heaven forfend, my wife's a lawyer, or was a lawyer. Sort of half the people I know are lawyers, so I can make that joke. My father's a lawyer. Just everyone's a lawyer. Anyway, don't become a lawyer unless you do. But anyway, where was I going with this? Yeah, if you take a job like that, you might have to move quickly through documents to find relevant information. And in that kind of context, then speed reading can be useful. But for anything that's to do with your schooling or anything like that, I would not focus on reading fast. I'd focus on learning to read better and having better vocabulary knowledge and so on, and that will increase your reading speed to a natural level that is fast enough but allows you to understand what you're reading properly, and that is what you should aim for. I actually read more slowly now than I used to when I was young because I've learned to read at the speed where I'm understanding things and not rush it, and I'm happy with that. Okay, did you teach to school? A long time ago I taught at Christ Hospital. Daniela, what is happening? I missed it all. I sometimes look back at my life and I look back at the last 85 years of my existence and I think, where did it all go? How did it vanish so quickly? So I understand how you feel. What happened in my life? I missed it all. I was on YouTube. How do you answer the question more quickly as in improve your speed time to answer the question faster? By learning good exam techniques so that you understand what you're doing. Most of your time wasted answering a question is time thinking about how to answer it. As you practice encountering questions like that in your practice work, you will start to understand what that kind of question requires. And then when you see it in an exam, you'll be able to respond to it more rapidly. Whereas if you see a question type you've never seen before, you'll spend longer thinking about it. So it really comes down to practice and familiarization. It also comes down to having good techniques. So spotting the key question words, looking at the number of marks, working out how to structure your answer, whether it's maths or English, doing it, checking back at the question, having really good systems that you can rinse and repeat, as the saying goes, and that will help you to speed up as well. The thing that won't help you to speed up is going, I must move more quickly. That will just make you panic, possibly need to read everything 5 times, maybe go more slowly, or make a ton of mistakes, none of those being good outcomes. How can I send you something not on the comments? Well, there are also the comments under the videos after the lessons. If there's something I need to see individually, so you've got a question about my products or services, or you've got a suggestion for the channel or something, or you can also go to the RSL Educational website, the link's in the video description, go to the contact page on the website, and there's a box there where you can send me an email, and that's another way of contacting me. I think Robert's already done speed, distance and time. I have indeed. It's one of my shorts. I've covered it in other videos too, but there's one video specifically on it. Again, I'll put the video list in the comments after this lesson. I should have had it in the video description anyway. Robert, can you give some advice on how to be calm during the exam day? I've covered this a lot in my lessons. If you go to any of my question sessions at the end of live lessons, you're very likely to find something on this because people ask about it all the time. Just a few quick tips. There's a lecture that I always give about how if you've worked this hard anyway, you're going to be a success at secondary school. It's not just words, I really mean that. So one of the main ways to be calm is to recognise the exam doesn't matter by that much. Yes, you can't control your future, but insofar as anybody can, you're in a really good position by having worked this hard. You are the kind of person who will do well at secondary school, even if it's not the school that you want to go to. So that's one way to be calm. Another tip I've given recently, prepare some challenging maths and English and reasoning questions, like 1 or 2 for each, but don't do them now. Just photocopy them, put them to one side, and have them ready in a folder for the morning of your exam. Then when you wake up, do those questions. So they're new questions for you, they're a little bit challenging, they get your mind going with maths and English and reasoning. So then when you go into the exam and you open your English paper, this is not the first English question that you've answered today, because you've already practiced some and your brain is already ticking. And that will help you to be calm and go, no, this is not only something I've done before, it is something I've already done today. Don't try and do a whole paper of each in the morning of the exam. You'll be exhausted by the exam and not concentrating. Just 1 or 2 questions for each subject to get your brain ticking over, and that will really help. Other ways to be calm, I say get a good night's sleep. It really helps. But the reality is, before something stressful like an exam, often we go to bed and don't sleep very well. It happens. So just remember that whatever's going on, whether you're tired, whether you're a bit ill, whether you've been distracted by something that happened that morning, you look around the exam hall, it's going to be full of other people in the same situation. So just accept it and go with it and do your best. And that's all you can do. And that's how you go into life and approach lots of other things that are frankly more stressful than exams, by just accepting that all you can ever do is your best. And all you can ever do is your best on the day. You can't go back and redo your preparation. You can't go back and revise that topic better that you wish you'd revised better. You can just do your best now in that place. And you just need to accept that, breathe in, breathe out, get to work and do your best. And the last thing I want to say about feeling calm in exams is that it's easy to look at exams as a negative thing and to say, this is a test and I must not fail it. But there's another way to look at exams and to say, I've been studying this stuff for years and now finally I get to make something of it. I get to show what I can do. I get to impress the examiner. I get to show to myself what I can do. And if you approach it positively like that, it will help you to feel calm. Someone's asking, what should you do on the day of the exam? I've just answered that. What do you recommend I do on the day's morning and the evening before that? I've literally just answered that question. Come on, listen, people. It's comprehension skills. Listening to me is also comprehension. How do you improve at something you are not good at? Well, that's a very big question. And I can answer it in all kinds of ways. But I think there's one thing that I think is the most important thing for something that you think you're not good at. It's very rare for there to be something that in a big way, in a complete way, we are not good at. So, for example, you might feel that you're not very good at riding a bike. But when you really sit down and think, what am I not very good at? You actually realise that what you're not very good at is balancing when you stop, because you fall over too much to one side. and you kind of get your foot down too late, or you struggle to stop when you're on a hill, for example. And then when you realise that, you think, actually, I'm not bad at riding a bike. I'm just bad at this one particular aspect of riding a bike. And then you go outside and you find a little hill where there are, no cars around or anything, and you just practice stopping on it. Oh, the light's gone up on my head, so I've just gone dark. Maybe it's trying to send me a signal. It's time to stop. I will stop soon. Thank you, light, for the reminder. I need to charge it. So then you go away and work on that skill. And then when you've worked on it a bit, you realise actually you're not bad at riding a bicycle anymore, because the one thing that was a problem for you, you've sorted it out, and now everything falls into place. These exam subjects, they're the same. You might think that you're really bad at, at maths. But when you look into it, actually you realise there are just a few things that are causing you a block. And then you work out what they are. You go and watch the relevant Easy 11 Plus videos, you do the worksheets, you do some other practice, use some other practice resources. How dare you? And then you think, actually, I'm not that bad at maths. I've sorted out that problem, and really I'm fine. I'm going to be fine with this. And that applies even on a smaller level. You might say, I'm really bad at questions that require me to... I'm really bad at written comprehension questions, longer written comprehension questions. But then when you look into it, you realise that what you're bad at is explaining evidence. So then you just practice giving short quotations and explaining the effect they have or what they mean. And then when you've done that a bit, you realise actually you're not bad at long comprehension questions anymore. There was just a particular skill that was lacking. So my main advice when you think you're bad at something, particularly with relevance to these exams, but to be honest, it applies to pretty much anything you're bad at in life, is don't just go, I am bad at this thing, but look in more detail. Look at which aspects of that thing you struggle with, focus on them, try to improve them, and then step back and look at the whole thing again. And I think you'll find it's a lot better. Srikanth is still asking me what to do on the evening before the exam and on the morning of the exam. I've already given you loads of tips for the morning of the exam. And I've also said about getting a good night's sleep and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, I'm not just going to repeat it or come up with yet more points on the same question. This is the kind of spamming the comments that gets a little bit annoying. I've answered your question. What do you do if you run out of time and you change your answer but didn't rub the other one out? Well, if you've actually run out of time, then you don't do anything, do you? Because you're not allowed to do anything else. I don't really see this as a likely problem to come up, because if you've changed your answer, how long does it take to just draw a line through the wrong answer? You don't need to rub it out. You can just put a line through it. So I'm sure you've got time to do that. If you haven't changed your answer, then don't rub out the old one, because you might still get some credit for it. In fact, one thing I will say here, it's not the question that you asked, but it is an important tip. Never cross anything out in an exam until you've replaced it with the better thing. Don't cross it out or rub it out first and then put the new thing, because what happens if the examiner then goes, okay, put down your pens? And then you've got nothing there. So one important exam rule is always leave the old stuff, put the better stuff, and then cross out the old stuff. Not the other way around. Right, I'm going to finish on... why is everyone copying the same question? Is it just to annoy me? Okay, I'm old and irascible at 85. Too easily wound up. Right, it's been long enough. It's been about 50 minutes. So I'm going to call it a day there. It's been fantastic to have you. Is Dimitri around to say goodbye? Dimitri? Yeah, he is. I'm just going to go and fetch Dimitri for a nice goodbye. He's just under the table here, having a snooze. He's going to be rudely awakened. Dimitri, come and say goodbye to your fans. Go on, boy. Come and say goodbye to all of them. He says, no. I'm too much of a YouTube star. My fans, they just annoy me. Well, I'm sorry, Dimitri, but you depend on your fans. Without your fans, how would you get fed? Have you considered that? Yeah, how would you have got your nice new cat tree today? How would that have worked? He's got no answer. There we are. Amazing. I've reduced Dimitri to wordlessness. Okay, fantastic to have you here. I'm going to add that link in the comments just after I finish this for the complete list of Easy 11 Plus videos. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to become a member if you want loads and loads of wonderful extras. Doing that to my face. I don't know. It's got very soft paws anyway. They're furry on the bottom, if you can believe it. Look, furry on the bottom. Imagine having fur on the bottom of your feet. Who knows what gets stuck in them? I don't want to know. See you next Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. for the next Easy 11 Plus live lesson. And it's a bye-bye from me and Dimitri. Why are you so sleepy, Dimitri? Is it because you've been playing in your tree? Is that what it is? Or have you just eaten too much?